What's going on, Bruin Nation? Great to see and hear from all of you. Very excited about the latest episode of the Bruin Bible with our one and only, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Wayne Cook. Wayne, how you doing tonight?
Jamal, it is... I don't know. I don't know how I'm doing. They asked me that question. I mean, like, we've all been paying attention to the portal, and there's names that come up, and this is like the season of gifts, but I feel like it's a season of like the Grinch too, right? Like, we're gonna get some stuff, and I think for people that overreact to everything that happens, which might include us, who knows, to like, oh no, we're losing a coach. What do we feel about that? Oh, what are we doing? We're bringing in a coach that helped orchestrate an offense that scores a lot more points than we did. Oh, maybe that's a good thing. And then all of a sudden, oh, wait a second, are we losing another player? And then we have to decide whether or not we're happy or not, because this is what sucks. You just asked me how I was doing, and I just go off on a rant. I struggle so much with not getting like personal.
Yeah.
Cause like I'm a Bruin. I've been a Bruin since I was in high school when I always liked UCLA. And then I went to UCLA, and I've met so many players from the past that live in, that really want UCLA football to be good from like, the 70s and 80s. And then I cause I'm in a very lucky, unique position that I get to be around all these people. And I just struggle with this current world because, we get excited when we get new players, but like, at the same time, players are leaving too. That's why when I get to watch a player like Kay Medrano graduate, who came in and worked his butt off and had to switch positions, and it's becoming an all Big Ten conference football player who's going to get, drafted. To me, that guy's a Bruin for life.
Yeah.
Even some of the guys that come in as transfers when they were young, like Garber's transferred young and had to deal with the nonsense where, his 2 years ago and being, over, having a freshman play in his place when I thought he earned the job. And then, even Femi, transfer once, like I can live with that. I struggle with the Dylan Gabriels of the world, even though I think he's fantastic and I think he should be going to the Heisman. But like, it's your third school. Like who do you go? What alumni events do you go to? Do you go to them all? I mean, like it just seems silly to me. And then now, players are such like, we don't know that everybody entering the portal isn't just testing the market. They're saying, I'm going to enter the portal, and then I'm going to see what other teams will offer me, but I also am going to see what my own team will offer me. It's kind of like coaches now almost have to say, like, we're going to have to wait, and if the player stays, then we don't have to pay him any money, but if they decide they want to leave, then we might have to pony up and pay him some money. And it's like, to me, that part of it is dumb.
Absolutely, Wayne.
There's got to be a better way to do it, because it's like you're going to have people holding people hostage. And some of these players are going to realize, by the way, and again, I could be talking about some of our players or others, people are going to realize it doesn't matter what the fan base says you are. It matters what people that know football say you are.
Correct.
So you might test the waters and think that you're something special because about 10 fans that post on social media all the time think you're the best player ever. And for everybody that's watched practice all the time and sees it may not think the same thing that those people think. So some of these players are going to have their egos crushed too. So like it is what it is, but it's holy cow. That's the world of college football.
Holy cow indeed, Wayne. And before we sort of break down, I think, the week in review and sort of pass it on to you to kind of get your holistic thoughts. Speaking for Bruin a Bruin for life, Wayne, I've done my homework, and you are one of only three starting quarterbacks in UCLA football history to beat SC back-to-back years. It's you. It's Cade. It's Brett.
I knew that because both of them, like, remember, I did it first.
Yes.
Because I'm not winning. I'm the original, right? I'm the OG. Because Cade did it right after me with 4. Although we have to put a little bit of an asterisk because it was Paul Hackett team. So I'm Cade. I am kidding. Although Paul Hackett, anyway, I love Cade. And then one of my other favorite all-time quarterbacks is Brett Hundley also. And he did it 3 times. And I still remember the conversation I had with him After I want to say he won his first one at the Rose Bowl. I could be wrong.
No, he won the first Rose Bowl. Yep.
So so then I was hosting. I've done some weird hosting events in my time, but when I was a little bit younger, when the student body didn't look at me as who's this old guy on stage, I hosted the USC UCLA pep rally a few times. Which is
really, I didn't know that.
Now I've been relegated to the banquets, because an old gray-haired guy can do that. But the pep rally, I think, is a younger man's job. But I did my best to get up there and get everybody pumped up. And I remember standing with Brett Hundley like before the players all went on stage, and we all went up there. And I said, "Dude, I've won at both places. I've won at the Rose Bowl and I've won at the Coliseum." I go, "You want to win at the Coliseum? Like, it's so fun to beat those and watch the SE people walking out of the stadium, because the arrogance and the bragging and the you don't even deserve to be on the same field as us. It's awesome to be like, bye-bye. Bye-bye. And there's only so many of us that have had the chance to do that, to beat them on their soil. And like you said, but anyway, thank you for digging that up, man. I appreciate
absolutely,
that.
Wayne. Yeah. And so, what you say holds a tremendous amount of weight always, but I always like to, remind our viewers of that of many ages, that why you are the man, the myth, the legend. But Wayne, an incredible week in review. I'll just sort of summarize it, if you will, and then we can sort of get into it. Hard to believe that last Sunday was 8 days ago in terms of sort of UCLA football timeline, because famously or infamously or ironically or poetically, however we want to start this, DeShaun Foster was asked about Justin Martin and said, I think he's got a really bright future at UCLA moving forward. And then 12 hours later, we see Justin Martin enter the portal. And then we see TJ Harden enter the portal. And then we see our man, who we've talked about so much over the years, Logan Loya, enter the portal. And then someone that we really enjoyed watching over the course of spring ball and fall ball, and someone that we really thought was going to sort of break out at some point, Braden Pagan, who was always getting open in spring practice. Those guys hit the portal. Then, of course, the beginning to mid of last week was really all about high school recruiting. It was topsy-turvy. Epi Sitanale was a sort of big 4-star edge out of Bosco that we thought we had. He gets flipped to Ohio State at the 11th hour with presumably all of their nil and all of the bells and whistles that come with their program. And then who we thought potentially was going to be the future quarterback of the program, Madden Iamaleava, and his Long Beach Poly teammate, Jace Brown, sort of flip also. And Madden goes to Arkansas, and we're wondering, what's really the next step here? And then on top of that, Collins Achampong decides to sort of enter the portal. And then the very next day, Eric Bieniemy is no longer the offensive coordinator at UCLA. And within 8 to 12 hours, Tino Sunseri is the new offensive coordinator of UCLA, who's been so instrumental with perhaps one of the greatest turnarounds in the history of college football with Indiana under Cignetti. He had wild success with Cignetti and James Madison. So we're feeling really good about that moving forward. And then fast forward all the way to today, where Nicky Prongos is now into the portal. So wild, topsy-turvy, a lot of outputs. Presumably there's going to be some more inputs in the weeks and months to come. But just, Wayne, how are you sort of feeling about this week, assessing it, your emotions, your analysis? Just how are you absorbing this moving forward?
So I've learned a lot. Like for one thing, I've learned over the years to not get too freaked out about recruiting. Because some of our best recruits have been people that we didn't expect to be our best recruits. We've had so many good players that have been, 3-star guys like, the Eric Kendricks of the world. We've had other great recruits that have ended up being amazing athletes, but we've had, Anthony Barr is one of our best players ever on defense. Well, he came in as a running back. Kay Medrano was one of our best players, came in as a receiver. Antonio Mafi was a defensive player and switched to offense. Just last year, Jay Toia was gone and he came back. So for everybody out there thinking that it's for sure that these players are gone, remember they still may be enticed back, especially if there's more coaching hires, and we know that names can attract people. We saw what happened with Coach Meat that came back and a couple of recruits followed. We were Sunseri, who you mentioned, some people refer to him as a quarterback whisperer. And, that's, to me, how do I say this? And again, I have to be, I want to be really careful because, I really liked Eric Bieniemy as a human being. I liked him when he was here the first time. I liked what he did with Maurice Jones-Drew and great, and he's a great guy. But the offense was horrific last year. I mean, it's no other way to say it. It made no sense sometimes. Sometimes the plays took way too long to get in. We talked about the verbiage and how complicated it is. NFL players, it's their job. They're not students. And to have all these guys, and we had so many older players, which is why it's so funny. I did this huge breakdown, and I don't have it with me, but I did this huge breakdown of I compared UCLA and Oklahoma and Vanderbilt. And the reason why I did that is because I was against, Alabama getting into the playoff because, of who they lost to.
Right.
And I argue in my argument, and I think I proved it, that if you look at UCLA's 5-7 record, I could give you a legitimate argument of how that's a better win for the teams in the Big Ten that beat UCLA than it is to beat Oklahoma or Vanderbilt. Because they didn't really beat. I mean, they had a win or two that were good, but it was just their schedules were. I wasn't impressed with their schedules, and I wish I had it in front of me. But the reason why I do stuff like that is because this is confusing. UCLA was literally a decent offense away from winning 8 games this year.
Yeah.
And all of you out there that think it was a quarterback issue, it was not. We had crapola plays in the red zone. We had one of the worst red zone offenses ever, and you cannot tell me we don't have enough good receivers to be good in the red zone. You can't tell me that. We had to be able to do things quicker to get rid of the ball. And it seemed like that was like this all year. It's hey, we're doing some, help these linemen. The run scheme was above our talents' abilities. We had to have a better grasp of how to get these guys to where it was easier for them. And I think when you watch offenses in the modern era, which is why I'm so excited about Coach Sunseri coming, is that they're if you can remember, and I know you can, Jamal, you go back and watch that Indiana game. I know you were doing the same thing I was doing. You're oh my God, wow.
Yeah.
They found ways to take a quarterback from a lower division and turn him into an all-conference player. I think he was second team. I could be wrong.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
They found a way to take James Madison players, like the receiver Surratt, and make him look like an elite, Ohio State type receiver. You can't tell me that's not play calling. Indiana, they upgraded their talent, but they also ran an offense that worked. And we live in an era where you're watching what Arizona State's doing. You can't tell me they're just magically way more gifted than they have been. The Scadaboo's been there. He's been good. But, man, they found a way to turn that quarterback into a really good player, and they've done so many great things. And what SMU's doing is incredible. So you can't tell me that we can't find, and I said this, my wish list, and I didn't want anybody to be gone, but I had a feeling this was going to happen. I hear stuff sometimes, and so I thought there was going to be quite a few changes. And to me, this is a home run. And we haven't seen anything yet, but, man, I'm pumped. And it may not happen right away because of what's happening right now with people going and coming. We may not get enough in. I literally, and again, I'm not saying anything bad about Iamaleava. I'm stoked with who we got instead.
With McDaniel, yep.
Personally, I think it's, and I won't say why I'm saying this, but I think it's going to be less of a headache. I think you're going to get a worker. I think you're not going to, I don't think it's always going to be about where's my next paycheck? I really don't. And I could be totally wrong on that, but I just feel like that was a huge get after, because remember, and I'm not even saying that we're not going to go out and get it because DeShaun Foster talked about, quarterback in the transfer portal. If you can go out and find a junior or a senior and let young players compete, including the people that are still on the roster, that to me is the best situation because I don't really think that playing freshmen. I mean, we're seeing it. Like the other Iamaleava is actually doing it. Who I think is probably in most people's minds the better of the two.
Yes.
But that doesn't matter. They're talented players. Don't get me wrong. And I swear I'm not trying to say that he's not going to be great at Arkansas. But every recruiting cycle, we lose people. We have a couple surprises, and everybody freaks out. And then you find out down the road that, like you mentioned, the transfer of the Miami kid that I never learned to say his name because he didn't play.
Right.
Well, and I'm sorry, but like we all get worked up. Like I swear, like it's like DeShaun Morrell. Like he's a player that I still remember what happened when we pulled in a running back from Alabama because people can't help themselves. Like Alabama, we're stealing someone from Alabama. Well, maybe, but maybe there's another. He was hurt all the time and he never played. So it's like there's a few like Logan Loya. I'm very sad about, and I actually think that I had a great conversation with Logan Loya like many times. Like we've become friends, and like I probably hyped him up more than I should have because I'm not a coach, but I just know as a person that knows football that I would love to throw to that guy, and I would. And he's always open. I love the way how smooth he plays. He never seems stressed out. He always seems calm. I would love for him to be one of the players that we can figure out a way to get back. But I imagine he's a little bit like, listen, guys, I was our leading receiver coming back this year, and you guys took me out a lot. Like he was out of the rotation a lot. And so I get that. Pagan, I told Pagan straight to his face many times, dude, you're going to be my next Cam Medrano. You're the guy I am saying can play this game. You're big, you're athletic, you make plays every time I watch practice. But some guys can't stay healthy.
Yeah.
He literally could not stay healthy. He never made it through enough practices to actually prove what he could do. And so I wish him the best. I mean, I get it that maybe he's thinking I'm not going to play here. Because, again, remember, I've always been okay with that type of transfer. I struggle more in the modern era of the guy that's a star.
Yeah.
That's like, I'm just going to go cash a paycheck. Because then it's like, where's your loyalty, dude? Ask, take a couple $1,000s less and stay with your boys. Like, stay and finish your career here. So, I don't know. I mean, TJ, it's hard to, when we talk about him, like, he's done a lot of good things here. It's a bummer, and it's hard to run behind a struggling offensive line. But, like, and again, I'm not going to say anything bad, but, like, well, here's what I've learned. Let's just. I know I'm trying to be careful right now. I'm trying to be guarded because I have some really strong opinions about this stuff. I was actually just texting with Matt Stevens about how sickening high school and college football makes me.
Yeah.
There's no loyalty. People don't want to play with their guys. Like they're not looking and going like, I can't imagine going to my best friends in college and be like, hey, I'm out. I'm going to go play somewhere else because, for whatever reason, I would never give up my final season at UCLA, even though we were 5-6. I would never trade that in for the world because of the way that whole season worked out. We won our last 3 games. We beat SC. You couldn't take that from me. And people were like, well, you were 5-6, you sucked. That's all the people out there that have ruined college sports and the media and everything else that have made it out like the only teams that are good are the teams that win every game.
Right.
Screw all you people. There's hundreds and hundreds. There's thousands of athletes that have fought, scratched, and clawed through a 500 season and are damn proud of it because they had to work their butts off to win those games. And so I get frustrated. And so the players jumping around looking for a better opportunity and more money and all this stuff, I really think that we're going to watch the game that we love. It's going to cost us. And I'm saying this too. Kids are learning in high school now that you transfer to play on better teams. And they're being sold the idea that if you transfer to play on better teams, you'll get more recognition, you'll get better in practice. And then we watch the players like Cam Scattaboo that's like, I've always been overlooked. And in reality, the guy should be going to have a chance to win a Heisman Trophy.
Yes.
He's had that good of a year, and he led Arizona freaking State to the playoffs. Literally. So, like, I struggle with all that stuff because I always have felt like what sports is meant to be is this thing that raises, and again, this is men and women. But in football, it takes young men, it puts them in a very unique thing that most people are incapable of doing. and it should turn them into the leaders of tomorrow. I mean,
Yeah.
every great coach will tell you that. And it's still happening. It is still happening. But we are creeping into where the prima donnas are running the world right now.
Yeah.
The individual and all that stuff to me is not what I was raised on, what football was supposed to be.
No. So well said, Wayne, and I couldn't agree more. I want to double click on a couple of things that you said, because there's so much wisdom there. One is, I think you're talking about the challenge of being able to have an enduring culture in today's day and age when it's become so transactional. And the second thing is, I do want to double click on the Sunseri and the McDaniel get, because I think those are probably, in the grand scheme of things, perhaps the greatest headliners, the greatest needle movers moving forward. Wayne, I'm going to sort of give my perspective of EB and the offense. So, this is just sort of me talking. I think there were three fundamental challenges with an Eric Bieniemy run offense. I mean, number one, to your point, was just the production, right? I mean, this was 117th total offense in terms of yards per game out of 134 teams, 126th scoring offense out of 134 teams. And then when you look at the underutilization of key talent, we talked about Loya, the leading receiver, J.Michael Sturdivant. I mean, we saw the flashes against SC. I mean, this guy's an NFL caliber receiver, Wayne. And then you talk about the likes of a Keegan Jones. The underutilization of those players, I think, was really problematic. Second, Wayne, and not to pile on, but having, and you have much greater access to the team than I do, but from my perspective of going to spring practice and fall ball, Bieniemy's demeanor, particularly with certain players, was very hard-nosed, hard-charging, very aggressive. It was back in the 80s and 90s kind of style of coaching that I'm not sure a lot of guys today can really respond to. I mean, the practices I was at, he seemed to really lock in on like TJ, for instance. And I remember turning to Will and saying, Bieniemy doesn't ease up. Like, Harden's going to transfer at some point. And lo and behold, that's what sort of happened. And third is, I think there was, I'm going to call it a non-traditional dynamic between EB and DeShaun, where from my perspective of having been in the corporate world, having done some things sort of outside of football and the game and whatnot, when I would observe a UCLA practice, to me, it looked like Eric Bieniemy was the CEO and DeShaun Foster was just happened to be there also, sort of, going around to different teams. It was a very odd dynamic in terms of head coach, offensive coordinator. I know they had a relationship in the past, Bieniemy perhaps with more experience. There was some deference there. But I think that DeShaun, from my vantage point, I think struggled to sort of have his own voice. And I think that sort of manifested itself in when you have your first pillar as discipline, and this was a vastly undisciplined team over the course of 2024, I think something was lost there in terms of just the meaning of the voice and the credibility. And so to me, I think this is a situation where 1 + 1 is much greater than 2, where I think you get a Sunseri where schematically this is going to be a much greater offense. Output-wise, this is going to be a much greater offense. But I also think DeShaun gets to be the head coach. And I think and Sunseri perhaps is going to be a more player-friendly offensive coordinator that will enhance team culture. Any thoughts there, Wayne? And sort of to piggyback off of that, what's the type of player from all the film that you've seen with Sunseri that now UCLA needs to target, both for kind of from a skill position standpoint, offensive line standpoint, to really maximize kind of him stylistically?
Okay, so there's a lot there, and well said. I don't know if, like, my problem with coaches that bark a lot, and I you could say it's a modern day kid. I hated being yelled at.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, shut, like, literally, like, if you know me as a player. Like, I played golf this weekend. I'm going to give you and I swear this is a tangent, but I'll come back. I played golf this weekend, and I play against my good friend JD, and he's a really good golfer. He hits it 20-something yards farther than I do, so I'm always catching up. Like, he's hitting an 8-iron, I'm hitting a 5-iron sometimes. Our irons are, but anyway, it's we were tied at the turn, 39-39, and I doubled 10 and bogeyed 11, and he picked up a stroke on each hole. Like the first 3 holes of the back nine, so I'm down 3. I got quiet for a couple holes, made a couple of pars, was like talking to myself. Like literally, I'm a 53-year-old former athlete that those jerseys are from 30 years ago. And I'm literally pepping I just get quiet. I don't throw clubs. I don't yell the F word. I might be saying that word a few times in my head to myself. And then the next thing I know, I birdied 3 of the last 4 holes and won and shot a 75. It was a really good day. And that's how I wired. If you're going to just freaking berate me and yell at me all day, I'm like, you know what? I really didn't intend to screw that up. You can get mad at me. Homer Smith, everything he did as an offensive coordinator was strategic. He literally would put me in drills and take me out before I took the snap because I didn't put my hand under the center's butt the right way. Cook, hand on cloth, get out of my drill. And I'd be like, but because I knew as a teacher now, everything he did was a brilliant, teachable moment.
Yeah.
He never just started throwing F-bombs at me for no reason. I mean, listen, we even see this. I'll use Bobby Knight as an example. I'll use Bobby Knight as an example. There are only so many players that can tolerate that type of coaching. And it does not mean for all of you out there, that just means you're soft. No, people don't want to be abused. Nobody wants to be abused verbally by their coach. Like, I can handle getting yelled at if I did something wrong. I'm not that soft. I can handle running wind sprints till I'm going to puke because the team did something stupid. But there's always a point where basically, and this is the part that stinks when you're a coach, people will tune you out. Everybody listening right now that's had a boss that's like a total micromanager that is just large and in charge and you can't do anything right and they're always right, eventually you just tolerate them. Homer Smith, I literally would have like done anything for that man. Terry Donahue, I would have done anything for that man. Like, and so I worry about the constant berating stuff. I don't know if that's a healthy way to coach in the old days or now.
Yeah.
Like, I really don't know. And it's like, and trust me, I tell people all the time that coach youth sports, football on its own will establish whether or not you're tough or not. Because there are kids that the first time they get knocked on their rear end will not want to play anymore. And there are kids that'll pop up and say, bring it on. And you see it when they're little. And I'm like, that's what you're looking for. And so you don't have to scream and yell at kids. And then when they start crying because some gigantic man's yelling at a 10-year-old, and they're like, why are you crying? Like, because you're a bully, dude. Stop it. That kid's never going to want to play football again. You might have just ruined his whole career. So there's too many people out there doing that, and I've never agreed with it. And so it is what it is. But I'm more concerned with the fact that the offense was so anemic. I mean, it was it just didn't make a whole lot of sense. We talked about that with Logan Loya. I was like, why are we pulling out our third down guy on third down? Well, Titus was great too, so it wouldn't have been him, but between those two and our tight end play, Matavao, those were our guys. If he needed 5 yards, I mean, those are the guys that need to be in the game, and I would watch number 17 come out all the time, and I actually praise him for the attitude that he had. I was really stoked that at the and this is really cool because you know I host the banquet, and I believe he got one of our captains. Yeah, he got one of the captain's award. So to have a player who I think his role was lessened end up getting that award, I think it says a lot because he never wavered. So I have zero hard feelings against that. But I know I told a golf story and I got sidetracked. Sunseri, as far as his style, like if you really think about it, what I see when I look at some of these young coaches and the offenses that they run, they're getting their best players the ball in space. And we've said this a lot over the history of football because that's kind of what you're supposed to do. You know what I mean? Like literally, if I saw J.J. Stokes one-on-one, I was going to throw him the ball. And if he wasn't, that meant someone else was going to be open. Like that made it a lot easier for me to do what I was doing. But sometimes I'm like, is J.Michael on the field? Like and again, that wasn't just this staff. That was the last one too. But maybe part of that's been J.Michael too. Maybe he's just not always as into the game as he should be. And I don't know that for a fact because wow, did he look good at the end of the year. So, and he did the same thing last year. Remember, he had that great bowl game. So, it is what it is. I know I talked about the coaching styles, and I also talked about so I think a quarterback that can process, can get the ball out quick. I mean, if you look at what Rourke did, Rourke was really good at throwing for a high percentage and getting the ball out to his guys on time. And I will say for any coordinator, if that's not what you want in a quarterback, I'm sick to my stomach that we didn't get to see Ethan Garbers in a better offense this year.
Yeah.
Because he had his moments where it's like, wow, when we get against Fresno State, that first drive, I'm like, look at the pocket. I haven't seen him with that much space to throw, and he's throwing touch passes to Matavao. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I see in practice. And that's the other thing, by the way. Practice is so misleading in football. It's so misleading because you can't tackle the running backs. You're not hitting the receivers. And so everything looks better. Receivers are courageous in practice because they're not going to get their heads taken off. Running backs, that looks like they broke one when they really didn't. Sometimes there's a sack that didn't happen and the quarterback throws a touchdown because they just run by the quarterback and they don't sack him. And so everybody gets all excited. Oh, it's working in practice. Well, yeah. And also the quarterback has to deal with the fact that he's not getting hit. And then the first time you get in a game and you got hit 10 times already, it messes with the way you play. So it can be very misleading.
No, that makes sense, Wayne. And as you were describing kind of the ideal quarterback for the Sunseri system, seems like it's of that ilk of sort of Bo Nix or, kind of the Drew Brees. There seems to be kind of a Sean Payton element of process information, get the ball out quick, high completion percentage, stay ahead of the sticks. It's a very rhythmic offense, with Indiana that we saw this year. And when you sort of get off of schedule, that's when sometimes trouble happens. We kind of saw that a little bit with Ohio State and Indiana. So I think that's going to be really exciting for fans coming up here. Wayne, I want to switch gears just a bit. I think moving forward, we feel pretty good, despite all of the volatility, that from a skill position perspective, given Sunseri, given where we're located, given the school, I think we're going to be okay. Secondary, we've had sort of a history of being able to sort of replenish it through the transfer portal. My big concern going into 25 is both trenches, and when you think about the fearsome foursome that we're losing defensively in terms of Toia, Madrano, Oladejo, and you got to believe Schlesinger is going to go pro after a Butkus caliber season. And then on the flip side with the offensive line, losing Carlin, losing Holstege, and now losing Nicky Prongos, arguably outside of Sam Yoon, your three most consistent best offensive linemen. Seems like there's a lot of work to be done on both trenches there, Wayne. How are you sort of feeling about that? And how many folks do you feel like the team needs to sort of go after to sort of replenish that depth?
So just to give you the real answer, I feel terrible about it. I was very excited about the defense coming back. I told you guys on this show, I literally thought the defense was going to be good this year, and I think I was proven right. I mean, absolutely. I don't think they lost any swagger. I even will brag about the fact that I was asking every coach, why is Schlesinger not playing more during spring? I'm like, who? Yeah, that guy. I didn't know his name yet. Didn't know how to say it. Had to look it up on the app and make sure I could. Oh, Schlesinger. Okay, but he could play, and I could see that he could play. And now, granted, did he exceed? I thought he could play. Being an All-American and a Butkus finalist is come on. That was kind of like the things that dreams are made of. But you never know. The funny thing about it is he's got a major that most of us, don't understand and can't talk, biochemical engineering or something like that. Maybe you offer the kid a doctorate degree for free and let him stay in school, give him enough money because if you really think about it, people don't realize it. Everybody I've ever talked to, and I remember this when I went and had my short stint trying to make 2 NFL teams, it kind of sucked. It wasn't like you were in college anymore. It was a full-time job. It was really, really hard. It's like people treated you like it was like you were invisible, especially if you were a free agent like me. And it was just, you put your body through whatever it took to get through a practice. And, I was beat up when I went there anyway. So I can't even imagine like what these 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old vets world's like. Now, granted, they have a lot of money, but that doesn't solve your pain issues. So, like, for me, I look at these kids and I'm like, you probably don't realize how good you have it in college. And then at the second time, now if you can make $500,000 and have another year in school, advance your education a little bit more, because football ends. Football money doesn't last forever. I mean, I know we act like it does, but I remember my dad used to tell me, a million years ago, you make $1 million. And my dad's a smart man, but I think he was wrong on this one. Make $1 million in the NFL, you live off the interest for the rest of your life. Like, that's not laughable now, because no, it doesn't. It wouldn't work now. I wouldn't mind having it to try, but like the idea is that like these guys, most of these guys have to do stuff after they're done playing. So you're seeing like Ohio State, they paid a lot of money to have a lot of NFL caliber players stay. Here's where college football, let's go back to the new version of the new reality is, though. If UCLA gives Carson Schlesinger a huge sum of money, or an incoming, quarterback that's, we've heard some of these numbers. When you do something like that, it limits what you can do. Or do you try to find that diamond in the rough and spend more money getting offensive and defensive linemen, going back to your main point, because in the trenches, we had one of the best run defenses in the country, and literally went through, like, if we had a Batman and Robin at our D tackle positions, Batman was healthy all year. Jay Toia, big number 93. He was the MVP of this team. And I'll share this with you, Madman. This is what I wrote down. I gave him the award, and I had these awards that, a couple days before it actually happened. And I'm listening to the radio driving up to the banquet, and Howie Long's talking about someone in the NFL who plays defensive tackle. And Howie's like, when I played, Al Davis used to say, don't worry about the stats, just be disruptive.
Mm.
And I grew up watching Howie Long, and I can tell you something about that dude. He was disruptive.
Right.
Like, I don't think people realize how great that guy was as a football player. Like, when he played for the LA Raiders, man, that dude was good. Jay Toia was disruptive.
Yes.
He didn't, like, you looked at his stat lines and he might have like two tackles in a hurry, or like, and like, what did he do? Yeah, he had double teams all day. He collapsed the pocket all day. He made it to where the running backs had nowhere to go all day. And Carson Schlesinger, who I interviewed after the last game on the field, he specifically thanked Jay Toia because that dude could roam and make plays, because those guys weren't getting to their next level blocks. And so, and then remember, we went to Keanu Williams got hurt. Before the season even started, Jerry Smith got hurt.
Yep.
Like, we had, we had all these guys playing Kafusi, like all these guys playing the Robin role right there, but they did a great job too. And then when we moved Femi to the edge, that was huge. By the way, recruiting class, we got some serious help on the edge. I think we had like 4 defensive ends coming in. So like, they may not help tomorrow, but it will down the road. Yeah, but that kind of stuff, I mean, the trenches are going to be tough, because now you're talking about like Sam Yoon. We're going to be honest. He really helped solidify the actual snaps that were a problem earlier. He did a good job. I think when Prongros was at left tackle, we had that stretch where we were winning. We had that 5. That was a good group. They were playing better. But Yoon needs to get stronger. Sometimes he gets pushed back too much into the pocket. People don't realize this, but we talk about all the penalties and the unnecessary roughness penalties, hitting people out of bounds, all those 15-yarders. That is pure player error. I promise you, DeShaun isn't going up to these guys and saying, hey, we want to be so aggressive. We want to get some 15-yard penalties. I always laugh at people. I'm like, do you not think all of these athletes don't know what a late hit is? That's just stupidity on their part. So again, we got to get players that are disciplined enough, self-disciplined enough to not do those things. But I would argue that a lot of our false starts and a lot of our issues with offense was stemming from the fact that our guys were going up against, first of all, we played a gauntlet. every team we played this year that we lost to, every single team that we lost to is bowl eligible.
Right.
Every single team. 3 of the teams that we lost to are literally in the college football playoffs. Okay. And every team is bowl eligible. Of the teams we beat, only one of them had a losing record, and that's Hawaii. Like literally the only team we played all year that's not bowl eligible. That's a crazy schedule. What would we all be talking about right now in DeShaun's first year if we won 7 or 8 games? We'd been like, okay, that's a good transition. We lost a lot of players last year, but how many games did we lose from Minnesota on that were winnable games? And if we would, I'm going to go back to the offense again. If we would have just had a functioning offense that would have scored, say, 28 points a game, I think that's reasonable in the modern day of college football.
Totally.
24 to 28 points is like probably on the lower end of being okay. We would have won. We would have beat Minnesota. We would have beat Washington. We'd have beat but we couldn't do anything. It was so hard to watch. So I'm rambling again. I haven't done one of these in a few days. So I'm
this is great stuff, Wayne. So, absolutely.
So what's really, really, really cool, and I want everybody to hear this. DeShaun Foster, and we talked about this before, as the leader of this team, I watched him grow all year. I watched how much he cares. And I know, I'm telling you guys, this dude was distraught in some of these locker rooms after the game. To the point to where he had to gather himself just to give the talk because he wants to win so bad. And he knows that all the discipline issues are on him, and he owns it. And I love that about him. But here's what I love too. He wasn't afraid. And remember, as a young head coach, sometimes we saw this with Chip Kelly, right? His loyalty was a weakness early on. It took him a while to get to the staff that was the staff that we're like, okay,
yeah,
right. And so once he got to that point, I think UCLA took that next step and started winning 8-9 games, right? It was never quite enough, but it was still better. DeShaun made the decision right away, and that takes a lot of courage. And so I'm glad he did it. And I want everybody to think about this. Think about the press conference on signing day. How much did DeShaun know? He knew He knew a whole lot. And that was kind of cool looking back on it. Now I'm like, oh my God, it was probably so hard for him to say, just wait. Things are going to change. And I think the Sunseri thing was the big thing. The quarterback swap was another big thing. You lose a couple of really good players, but you get some really good players. And he also is confident that they're going to find people that want to come to UCLA in the portal. So yes, people may want to leave. And again, we don't know what the offensive staff is not done yet. Right? I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not saying people are going to leave. People might, or come in or whatever. But sometimes when they come in, people might come with them. Remember what Signetti did at Indiana included a whole bunch of people that followed a coach. So who knows? So it's crazy. A lot of stuff's going to happen. But wow.
No, it's a wild time. Wayne, I'm going to leave you with this kind of last question. You've been so gracious with the time as always. Let's stick with DeShaun. And, it was really cool, I think, full circle moment where we all remember Big Ten Media Day and that press conference. And then to see sort of the press conference after all of the signing, he went from someone who perhaps was, the moment got a little bit big to someone who was sort of almost astutely playing the media like a great poker player. And so that was a lovely evolution to see. 2 things about DeShaun moving forward. He's got a 3-year contract, Wayne. We've concluded year 1. Hopefully we hit a grand slam in the transfer portal. We've got a number of kind of 3-star kids that we feel really good about, high potential, but it's going to take a little while. Conventional wisdom would say, no matter how much of a home run you hit in the portal, next year feels like a bit of a rebuild. And then it's maybe 26 is kind of the year where, you can start striving for bigger things again. But he's on a 3-year contract. Number one, do you feel like the timeline is adding up for him where he can do enough to sort of prove himself over the course of this contract? And then number 2, where the sport is, to our point, at the beginning of the conversation, how should UCLA be approaching this? In the world now of kind of uncapped, the world that we're in, there's no salary cap here. This is almost like baseball. And the Ohio States and the Texases and the Oregons are the Yankees and the Red Sox and the Mets. Does UCLA need to do something unique from a strategic perspective? Is there sort of a Moneyball equivalent to what UCLA needs to do? So I want to leave that to you in terms of DeShaun's timeline and DeShaun's strategy moving forward. How would you think about that, and what would you tell the fans?
So first of all, your Moneyball analogy is awesome because the answer is yes. We don't have Texas money. We don't have. I mean, yeah, it's LA. I get it, but there's so much going on in LA. It's like I don't think we're ever going to have Oregon money, or I really don't. Unless there's a billionaire out there that wants to decide that he wants UCLA win a national championship, he's going to give all his money to school. I don't. But we're doing better, and we will have enough money. But we've talked about these two teams that are in the playoffs right now. Well, look, first of all, we could go. I know SMU has a ton of money, so they're a different argument. They're probably going to improve more than any program in the nation because of how much money SMU has. So that's incredible to me. But Arizona State and Indiana are great examples of you can do it faster now. And on the other side of this, when you talk about how much time coaches have now, and DeShaun's talked about this. He's talked about how you can turn things around quick. I mean, he knows that. He's acknowledged that. But if you go through, say, a rebuild year after this year where you're not bowl eligible and you struggle again, you might have another. This is what I hate about the game. Like, guys don't want to fight from their 5-7 year and prove that they can get to a 10-win team in 2 years. They're thinking, screw this. I've been told my whole life how great I am and how much I'm worth. I'm going to go somewhere else. I had pretty good stats on a bad team. I'm sure somebody else will want me and pay me money. That's part of this process that I can't stand. So the window is shorter. So you're going to have to find a way to bring in players that can get you some victories now. And so, it's tough, but it can be done. And UCLA, I'm telling you, man, there's still parents out there. There's still parents out there that are great parents, that they're not, telling their kids to drop everything and go west because there's gold. Okay. And then they come back 3 years later with nothing. Right. And like ruin their families and ruin their lives. And like the age old, like if you're chasing the wrong things in sports, like I've always said, greatness, the byproduct of you being great in sports is money. Chasing money and not chasing greatness, you're probably not going to get it. There's been too many athletes that get their first NFL paycheck and they forget how to work hard and they're not hungry anymore. And if you don't think that's going to happen to 18, 19, and 20-year-olds that aren't driving around in a fancy car and they've already got what, most people are working their tails off to get to. And so, I wish 10 years from now, there should be a 30 for 30 on how many athletes did not live up to their potential because of money. Because when it's Rocky 3 is one of my favorite Rockies that I wish more people talked about, because the Sylvester Stallone Rocky literally lost his edge because he got everything. Yeah. And Apollo had to say, dude, we got to go back to the gym, man. We got to go back to your roots. Like we're going to go back to the streets and figure this out. There's a reality behind that. You get soft when you get everything you've wanted. You kind of like lose that edge. So you got to find the right type of kids. You got to go out. And it doesn't have to be, because remember, Indiana, I bet you if you looked right now, how many Indiana and Arizona State players, and even I would even say SMU. Right. How many of those how many 4 and 5 stars are on those rosters?
No, not many at all.
There's not many at all. So you can win that way. And so I think UCLA could do it. And again, I'll go back to DeShaun Foster. I loved his growth this year, like especially with the media. And by the way, the media is part of coaching now because you're selling your program, right? You don't want to have people saying you really want to play for that. So you do, and he's improved all year. I don't know if you heard it, and again, if any of you listen to the radio, his halftime interview with me at the Fresno State game was absolutely phenomenal. I had a couple of questions about football, but he did TV before me, and I could see he was pissed off, and I just kind of set him up, and he said, these freaking players, I don't remember exact words, but he was like, man, he was mad. He's like, these players on this team have scholarships. They need to play like it. he was like calling them out. And I love that because that was a crappy first half. Like these guys, that was a Fresno State team. And we had several games. We should have whooped Washington. We had better players than they did. I swear. Right. I'm on the field. We had better players than SC. I know we lost those 2 games, but I'm like, holy cow. We do anything on offense in those games. So stop whining, looking at the other guy. You're on scholarship. Show up and play. And I loved hearing that. I was like fired up afterwards. My heart rate got going. And I'm like, man, if I wasn't an old guy, I would want to play right now. So I like that. And I want to see more of that out of him because I think he's a naturally passionate guy. I think he's ultra competitive. He's just going to keep getting better with the media stuff. But as a coach, and I'll end with this because I think this is important. I'm going to give everybody homework because I'm a teacher. I want you to go back to the 70s and 80s and 90s. So I was the last quarterback that Homer Smith coached at UCLA. And this is not a knock on Terry Donahue. As a matter of fact, it's a compliment to him. Terry Donahue, Homer Smith as the offensive coordinator at UCLA didn't always stay at UCLA. He was there and then he left, and then he was there and then he left. He was there and then he left. Okay, and he even left me my senior year and went and won an SEC championship with Jay Barker at Alabama. He coached, he coached Ortiz Jenkins and Keith Smith at Arizona to 10-win seasons when Arizona never did that. Guy just won. He was not here when Troy Aikman was quarterback. Guess what we didn't do when Troy Aikman was here?
Yeah.
We didn't play in a Rose Bowl. But he coached John Shara. He coached all the 80s guys from Matt Stevens to Rick Neuheisel to Dave Bono, to Steve Bono, to Tom Ramsey. He coached all those guys that won 3 Rose Bowls in a row. Okay, and so like when he was here, and I'll do another history lesson. George Washington wanted a cabinet, right? He wanted Alexander Hamilton. He wanted Henry Knox. He wanted Thomas Jefferson because he knew he needed good people around him. He needed assistant coaches and advisors, and he picked the best of the best. Every good head coach has great assistants. Every one of them. And if DeShaun will hire the right people, and I'm so hopeful that Sunseri's going to be this guy on offense, that can change everything. And it's not a knock on good head coaches hire good people.
Yes.
And so to me, that is a key. And I am really thinking this is going to be a home run hire. I really am. And I cannot wait to see what kind of – now, does everybody have to learn new stuff? They sure are. But guess what? We're probably going to have a new quarterback, and we're probably going to have – and the receivers, they'll figure it out. They'll be fine. So, like, I don't know. I'm excited right now. I agree with you on the trenches. We got to do some work. But remember, I don't think Keanu's coming back.
Yeah.
Hudson Habermill's coming back at tight end. Remember, He was hurt. Like, and again, we don't know what's going to happen, but there are some players. I don't know what Gary Smith's status is. I know he was hurt. I don't know. Like, there's still going to be some people that can play, right? And so, like, remember Pellot at linebacker?
Absolutely.
Woods was good. Woods was good at linebacker. Those guys are really good. They just been waiting their turn. So, like, there's people that can play that are still on this team. And if we find the right pieces to fill in around them, Jalen Davies, I think he has another year.
Oh, yeah,
right?
Davies got one more year.
He's got, so we've got experience at one corner. Like, and think about the whole secondary was guys that were brought in from somewhere else last year, and they played really, really well second half of the season. I thought they got better as the season went on. So you're going to have to fill in some holes. Cam Jones won an award, the young running back out of Oaks Christian, and on stage, I'm like, this is a big dude. He's still there. Like
Berger's coming back.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm just telling you, like, there's people. We've got receivers. We know that, right? They're still there. So I don't know. I think we can lose our minds over what we don't have, or we can focus on what we still do have, and then what we're gonna get, because we're gonna get some more, and we'll see how that works out.
Well, so well said, Wayne. What we do have and what we're gonna get. Wayne, so gracious as always. Thank you so much for the time. And Bruin Nation, we got 9 months of the offseason until our next game, and LAFB has you covered for all 9 months. We're going to see Wayne time and again, hopefully in the offseason, and get those pearls of wisdom from the Silver Fox. And Bruin Nation, as always, have a great rest of your week. 4's up always. And until next time.